ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Now, yeah, I know I did a video already for Giant Size X-Men #1 that came out this week, but I was kind of on the fence as to whether I wanted to leave this as a separate video, just because that other video was long enough as it was, and I didn't want this last piece that I wanted to muse about to, I don't want to leave it to be lost in the shuffle, but there was a backup story to Giant Size X-Men #1 that I thought was very interesting, one that introduces a new character by the name of Justina LaGuardia that has a power very similar to characters we've seen in the past, characters like Synch and Hope Summers, who have the ability to borrow the powers of those around them, in this case, power mimicry, but also being able to maximize those powers in ways that the person who they're borrowing these abilities from couldn't accomplish. Now, in this particular instance, it's the case of anything you can do, I can do better. It's even heavily stated that Justina's power, it even just mimics the mundane abilities of normal humans. But when she's around a character such as, I don't know, Charles Xavier, like in this backup story, she's able to wield Charles Xavier's power on a superior level, able to overthrow him psychically, to be able to dominate him, and even be able to wipe his memory to the point that he doesn't remember her or anything that they said when they encountered, and does not remember any of those things till this very day. Not only that, this is something that even transcends the many deaths and resurrections of Charles Xavier over the years, even during the Krakoan era. So yeah, this makes Justina a pretty interesting character to me. I don't know what the plan is for her, but she very clearly does not get jiggy with the idea of the X-Men. She doesn't like the idea of Charles Xavier, taking teenagers, children, mind you, and using them as child soldiers, using them, to train them up as, vigilantes and fighters in a paramilitary force, regardless of whether it's for, good or ill, doesn't matter. And I actually like this character. I like this character a lot. While I do find it interesting that she's wielding a power we've seen, plenty of times, but in a somewhat different way, because I'll go ahead and say right now, yes, Hope Summers and Synch both have the same ability as she does. They can borrow the powers and abilities of anyone around them. More specifically, we have seen, less so in the case of Hope Summers, but more so in the case of Synch. Synch has been able to borrow the powers and abilities of not just mutants, but even other types of humans, like metahumans, even aliens. He was able to copy the powers of the post-humans in the Children of the Vault. He's been shown to be able to copy the powers of characters like Spider-Man. We've even seen him copy the abilities of the Venom symbiote, a whole alien. But also in the case of both of these characters, Hope Summers and Synch, how they're able to maximize the potential and power of the abilities that they mimic. What I find even more interesting is that there's very specific wording here used with Justina LaGuardia. She is able to copy the powers, but also utilize them in a superior fashion. She even says when Charles initially used Cerebro, something that she should not have known that he had, but because he was in her proximity, and because of that, she now has access to his telepathy, she was able to read his mind and learn all of his secrets, everything he would know. She knows that his Cerebro doesn't necessarily tell him what a mutant can do, at least not at that time, but more specifically, just that they're a mutant, and maybe how powerful they might be. But in this instance, she brings up that, oh yeah, you probably assumed my power was physical because there were no other mutants walking around me, so she was just better than every other human around herself. But when she's around another mutant, it's the same thing. So basically, and you're taking this point that Charles Xavier, not necessarily at this time frame, but much later in time, he is considered an Omega level mutant. Imagine a woman who has the power of another mutant who is Omega level, and that means she can take herself to the next level, even beyond that. If she was near a character like Iceman, Storm, Vulcan, any other of the well-known Omegas like Jean Grey or Exodus or Kid Omega, she would quite literally be superior to an Omega level mutant. If she was next to Magneto, the master of magnetism, she would be able to surpass him. And without much effort, she even says in this backup story that she doesn't really fully know how to control her powers to the fullest extent. that it's something she's going to have to learn over the years. And considering that she's meeting Charles Xavier at a time when, you know, we're talking about the 1975 range where Charles Xavier was actively trying to find mutants in order to help save his original recipe X-Men, well, that tells you how long she's been in the game. Now, once again, Marvel works on like a sliding time scale, so even though this technically takes place in 1975, you fast forward to now, it's probably been closer to like, you know, maybe 10, maybe 15 years, if that. I find it very interesting that this character pops up, and she seems to have nothing but ill will towards Xavier. She sees him for what he is. She reads him for filth, you know, in this, and she doesn't seem particularly interested in the X-Men on any major level whatsoever. And now it's pretty much hinted that she's going to come back at some point, that she's going to return. And this will probably be saved for like a future X-Men story arc. I don't know if this is anything that's going to play out in the future backup stories, or if they will have backup stories in the giant size X-Men, you know, one-shots that are coming out. We know there's going to be the Dark Phoenix Saga one-shot, the Age of Apocalypse one-shot, the House of M one-shot, and then there's going to be another giant-size X-Men number 2. But we don't, it's not 100% stated whether any of this is just all going to play out there. But I feel like right now, Al Ewing is setting up a really powerful character. Like I said, we don't know exactly where this is all going to play out, but I'm very excited to see what Al Ewing is going to do with this, if he does anything with it. Because like, other than Kieran Gillen, Al Ewing was one of my favorite writers from the X-Men's Krakoa era, so I thought it was really nice to see him actually get to, you know, touch that corner of the Marvel Comics universe again and really do something with it. I would love to see him, you know, kind of play this out. Let this bear out some more. And let's see what exactly Justina can do. Let's see how far she can actually go. I want to see her stand toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with some of the most powerful mutants in existence and see what she can do. Imagine that power. That is a power that quite literally is tournament banned. Like, you can't have this. Like, if there was a Marvel versus Capcom game that had her in it, you couldn't play her. Like, she would not be allowed. She would not be allowed. You'd have to pick somebody else. She's broken. She's broken. It is unfair to use her in this capacity. Tournament ban. Just think about it. Like, what if you put her next to a character like Iska the Unbeaten? What if you put her next to Iska the Unbeaten? If she could borrow Iska the Unbeaten's power, for those who know, Iska the Unbeaten is a Omega level mutant from the Krakoan era, specifically the Arakko side of things, who her mutant power is that she always won. She always wins, no matter what. She wins. If we just to kind of give you an idea of how her power works, we saw this in X-Men Red, where she was engaged in a friendly bet with Sunspot, and Sunspot, because at the time this bet was whether or not Magneto or Tarn the Uncaring would win in their fight of Omega level mutant versus Omega level mutant. The way that Sunspot was able to guarantee that Magneto won is because he jumped in before Iska could decide or even determine whether or not she even wanted to bet in the first place. Sunspot says, yeah, well, I bet you Tarn is gonna win. And because of that, in Iska understanding how her powers works, she knew that that would ultimately mean that fate would be twisted in such a way that Magneto would win. Because it doesn't just extend to her, it extended to anything she was involved in. Even we saw that during the Ten of Swords story arc. The side that she chose to be on was the side that won, because she can't lose. Imagine if a character like Justina LaGuardia was standing next to Iska the Unbeaten, and she can maximize that power, make it superior. That's her wording. She can wield the superior version of someone else's power. That's insane. That's insane. Tournament ban.